having family members here, I think is a real service to us as a council and to the community, despite how difficult it is for them. I appreciate the OAR's thoughtful approach to writing these reports. Even as members of the council, we often don't know about the specifics of what happened in officer-involved shootings, and there's often a lot of speculation and misinformation flying around in the public, and it's really hard to combat that if we don't have the information. There's great value to the transparency of having facts laid out in one place in this manner. I'm also going to be going back and reading previous reports. The questions I had last week continue to be at the forefront of my mind today. What is the value of these reports if we don't have clear mechanisms for tracking the implementation of the recommendations? Our city code is unclear. It states that the IPR director and the Citizen Review Committee shall address any policy-related or quality of investigation issues that would warrant further review. What does that mean? It obviously doesn't mean that we will implement all these recommendations. While we have adopted a few, and I appreciate the chief's comments, I still think we need to explore all the options we have in creating a more systematic approach to tracking progress on the recommendations. That may be internal, it may be external. I want to appreciate the Portland Police Bureau. They don't get a lot of praise, but OAR, despite some of the content of this report, have a lot of positive things to say about them. I think most importantly, how cooperative they were in this process. I want to commend the chief for her openness to OIR recommendations and for her response to their most current recommendations, which was almost 100% agreement, I believe. I do have to take issue with the defensive posturing of the Portland Police Association's president, Daryl Turner. I didn't find his letter a helpful message to send as we are striving to improve our police bureau, reduce deadly force events, increase the safety of all parties, and mend the relationship between the police and the community. None of us are beyond reproach, including everyone sitting at this dais, including the police bureau. And all of us have room for improvement until our very last day on this earth, I believe. And perhaps beyond, who knows? I want to highlight a few of the issues that Mr. Turner raised and my impression of the report. One, I think he felt like OIR was judging and criticizing his officers when I read this report as being really helpful, constructive criticism. We have to apply 20/20 vision in hindsight in order to reach our goal of reducing the use of lethal force and fatalities. Two, the report does not criticize officers for stumbling or falling, but simply asks the question if there were other tactical decisions that could have been made to keep them in a stronger position to begin with, and indicates the need for improved ground fighting training in the event they do find themselves in a compromised position. Three, suggesting that there may have been alternatives to using lethal force, even in instances where officers are being shot out at, also doesn't constitute a criticism in my mind. We know our officers face extraordinary challenges and must make split-second decisions. They certainly have a right to protect or defend their own lives, but lethal force may not always be necessary or the best or safest tactic given the circumstances, and that is simply what is detailed in this report. Finally, I want to echo a recommendation by the League of Women Voters, and I believe Dan Handelman. It's difficult to expect the public to digest and meaningfully engage with a 100-plus page report in 5 days over a weekend, so next time I would like to see the report made publicly available well in advance of the item coming to council. I want to thank Julie and her team at the OAR group. It was really a pleasure to meet with you yesterday. If we've met before, I apologize. I think it was the first. I want to thank everyone who came here today, everyone who testified, and just say that the fact that the Bureau finds so little disagreement with your recommendations is a testament to the vital work you're doing for our city. So thank you, and with that I vote aye.
Well, since the year began, we've seen 2 officer-involved shootings, one of which was a fatality. And since the beginning of my term, which was just over 2 years ago, there have been 18. The use of deadly force is without question the most critical decision a police officer can make. When it results in the loss of a life, it is certainly devastating for all. Officers are entrusted to make decisions under often challenging and complex circumstances. Every day we ask them to take years of training and knowledge of PPB policies and thoughtfully apply them in their interactions with the public. Officers enter those interactions with training, with expertise, and a firearm. Our expectations as a community around officer conduct, of course, should absolutely be high, because there's too much at stake. That's why the reviews like the one presented today are so important. I want to be very clear, this is Monday morning quarterbacking, and Michael and I and the other members of OIR were discussing that this morning. And I liked Michael's comment that he said he was a fan of Monday morning quarterbacking. So am I. And by the way, if you want to use a sports analogy, so are all winning teams. In fact, after a game, win, lose, or draw, what do for most of the next week? They review the tape. They go back and they look at what they did right, what worked well, what excelled, and they look at what didn't work and what needs to be improved upon. And while I sometimes get criticized for holding the Police Bureau, of which I am the commissioner in charge, to a very high standard, I want to be crystal clear. I do hold them to a very high standard because I want the Portland Police Bureau to live up to that high standard, and I know that by and large, they want to live up to that standard too. Officers enter interactions with the public with these high expectations. OIR has served a very valuable function, in my opinion, for the city as a third-party reviewer of officer-involved shootings in Portland for the last several years. The reviews have enabled us to assess whether PPB's current policies and training are in fact reflected in practice. As leaders, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to ensure that the correct policies and training are in place so that if an officer makes the decision to use deadly force, he or she does so with the proper foundation in place. Though there definitely continue to be areas for improvement within the PPB, it's also important to emphasize, as the OIR group does, the good work the Bureau has done over time to improve its training, systems, and processes. It is not an easy job to be part of the Portland Police Bureau, and it is my hope that while we hold the Portland Police Bureau and the men and women in that bureau to a high standard and we hold them accountable, I hope we will also support them in their efforts as public employees in this city the same way we support public employees in all of our bureaus. And I hope that we heed the chief's advice, that we give them the tools, the resources, and the access to training that we give to other bureaus when they seek to improve themselves. Since joining the city of Portland, Chief Outlaw has been a force for change. She's made clear efforts to connect with Portland residents and push the Portland Police Bureau to the next level of policing. She gets very high marks from people in the community. I also have a recommendation, call it a directive, call it an expectation, call it a new partnership to Chief Outlaw. And looking forward to the next report, I expect to be provided with periodic updates from the Bureau on the implementation status of each of the recommendations not currently or fully in practice. I'd then like the full update presented to council at the time of the 7th report's release next year. I would like this to become institutionalized as part of the presentation of this report. And I heard a strong consensus from my colleagues on that point. I want to thank the chief, and I want to thank Acting Commander Bell for representing the Bureau today and for their persistent efforts to make PPB better for the residents of Portland. Last but not least, there is a role for the City Council here, and I think it's important for us to understand that sitting on this side of the dais, the call to improve and the challenge to be better rests with us as much as it does with the Police Bureau. And again, this gets back to the question of which contracts we decide to sign, because the contracts we decide to sign often lay down impediments to the leadership of the Police Bureau to be able to do the kinds of things that OIR recommends in their report. Some of the recommendations can be accomplished by administrative fiat, and I would expect the chief to live up to her commitment to enact those things through fiat as the chief of police. Other things will require additional support and funding from the Portland City Council in order to be accomplished. That is clearly laid out in the report. And last but not least, many of these issues will have to be bargained collectively with the Portland Police Association and other collective bargaining units within the Portland Police Bureau. In all of those cases, this council has a role as well in terms of accountability. Last but not least, I'd like to thank the OIR group for your critical eye in conducting the work and your partnership on these issues. I think this work is very important. I know you will continue to push us and prod us. You will continue to provoke important conversations. I will confess I'm not always going to agree with you, but that's part of the point here, is that we have a clear and open and frank dialogue about these issues. In this particular report, the 6th edition of the report, he made 40 specific recommendations. The police chief is committed and agreed to all 40 of those recommendations. I want to state for the record, so too do I. And I will work with the chief and the Bureau and my colleagues here and the PPA and others to ensure that we actually live up to that commitment. So with that, I thank you all. I vote aye. The report is accepted. Last little bit of business related to this is the second reading of the ordinance. That is item number 110. This is a second reading of a non-emergency ordinance. We heard the presentation on this last week. We took public testimony on this last week. This is with regard to the extension of the OIR contract. Barbara, please call the roll.
Today's hearing really showed why this is a good investment for the citizens of Portland. Thank you for your work. Aye.
Ferguson?
Yes, I just wanted an opportunity to have quality time with the principals of OIR before I voted to affirm this extension. Really great work, folks. Really appreciate you. Aye.
Well, I hope your reports get shorter and shorter until they don't exist. Until then, really appreciate your service to our city. I vote aye.
I like that sentiment. I support it. I vote aye. Thank you for your hard work. The ordinance is adopted. Have a safe trip home.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next item, 111.
Appoint Yolanda Salguero to the Portland Committee on Community Engagement Policing for a term to expire on February 6, 2020.
Nicole Grant, there you are. Come on down. And Yolanda's here, right?
Yolanda stepped out.
Of course.
She's been in town, has been here for a very long time.
Why don't we take a 2-minute, 5-minute break? We'll take a 5-minute break and we'll come on back and recess.
Now.